Hello, BookTube. It occurred to me just today that I haven't yelled at you about writing in quite some time. And we've only got 5 days left until February. The date that I have set sort of informally in my mind to write something, I write for a living. I write every day, but to write fiction. The date that I've set to write a fiction project is the 1st of February. It's a natural starting point. It's right around the corner. It's earlier than the earliest Camp NaNoWriMo, where I will certainly participate, but I want something to do before then. I love writing, and if you don't do it, you might not believe it, but you will love it too when you do it. It is wonderful. It's habit forming, and it feels great. Eventually, once you've built up the muscle so that you're not obviously poor at it, it will allow you to carve out a world that is totally under your control. None of this business that authors say in interviews about how, my characters write their own dialogue. No, they don't. No, this world is entirely under your control, and that can mean a lot when the rest of the world, the rest of your world, very much feels like it's not under your control. If you have one of those days or one of those weeks, it can feel wonderful to set aside the time, set aside an hour, and write during that hour. When everything that happens because of you. When all the decisions are yours, and all you have to grapple with are things that are your own creation. That is wonderful. It's a lot more satisfying than grappling with the creations of your stupid middle manager at your job. You have to grapple with those things anyway, but you don't have anything to do with them. You didn't make them. You can't remake them. Whereas when you get to your hour of writing time, all of that is gone. It feels wonderful, which is why I miss it so much when I don't do it. So I'm determined to write something for February, and I'm determined to nag you into writing something for February. What should it be? That is a big question that I have addressed on this channel a few times. I don't think the last time I did it was years ago. And that is, what should you write? A lot of people won't need to ask that question because they will be blessed not only with a bunch of ideas, but with ideas that come with their own priority tags. So they don't need to worry about what they should do. I am usually that way, but I'm not that way right now. I have a pretty good idea what I want my Camp NaNoWriMo project to be in the spring, but it could change between now and then. But this isn't Camp NaNoWriMo. February, whatever we do, will not have any of the restrictions of NaNoWriMo. You can set a word goal. I'm thinking that I might want to do a writing project that will last only for February and then maybe do another one in March. If I do that instead, I think Camp NaNoWriMo is in April. Pretty sure that's true. So maybe I want to do a writing project that will last me all throughout February and all throughout March. That's a long project. That's twice as long as any NaNoWriMo event. So that's a novel. If you're setting yourself a healthy word count every day, that's a lot. If you say, let's say, 1,000 words a day, right? That's a lot of, that's 60,000 words by the end of 2 months. That's a novel. That's a respectable manuscript. And you've only got a little bit of time to figure out what that would be. But same as not having word counts or word requirements, whatever writing thing I do in February also won't have any of the restrictions that NaNoWriMo has. NaNoWriMo says, for instance, no fan fiction, no pastiche fiction. It has to be an original creation of yours. It can be thinly veiled. Some of the biggest financial success stories of NaNoWriMo have been thinly veiled fan fiction, pastiche fiction. But it can't just be using somebody else's characters by name. Because one of the goals of NaNoWriMo is to keep your eye on the practical world of writing, that you want to get this in front of an audience. You want to get this published, even if you self-publish it. And you can't do that if it's somebody else's characters. If its characters are copyright protected. But not in an informal writing event for February. Doesn't necessarily have to be one of the restrictions. Also, one of the rules for NaNoWriMo, they're not carved in stone, you don't have to follow them, but one of the rules for NaNoWriMo is that it can't be anything old. You can't be just continually gnawing on one bone. It has to be a new project that you're doing. Not the Camp's NaNoWriMo, but NaNoWriMo proper in November. Yeah, it has to be something new. But again, a February writing program, a February writing write-in does not need to do that. It can be anything. And that's great. that gives you all the world to pick from, and you should be starting to think about it. No matter what your level of experience is at writing fiction, you don't need more than 5 days to pick what you're going to do. In fact, you should pick it tonight, because you're going to need some of that time to prepare what you're going to do. Right, NaNoWriMo, the main event, has Preptober, where you spend a whole month of preparation for writing your story. You're not going to have that this time around, but you can still have days to prepare, and that's good. And that's also important. Let's say, for instance, just hypothetically, that we did a writing project for February and March. 2 months. That's a long time. That's long enough to get almost any fiction project well and truly started, well and truly off the ground. Let's say that we know that, and let's say that we're going to do that, and let's say that it's going to be fiction, and it's going to be one project, not a blizzard of short stories, but one project. Okay, then that starts to give you a shape of which potential ideas you can and cannot do. Some of the ideas that come to your mind will not be finishable, even in first draft, in that time, so they have to go. But then there's the question of, once you've done that pairing, once you've got rid of all the stuff that you obviously can't do in 2 months, then there's the question of, what do you feel like writing? There's still going to be ideas in your head. Which are the ones that are going to carry you through the whole of 2 months? What's that going to be? Like, for instance, myself, I was automatically thinking, when I thought about potential topics, I was automatically thinking about BookTube events that are taking place in February. There's one about ancient Rome that takes place in, I think, March. And then there's one that takes place in February that's about Sherlock Holmes. Holmes is where the heart is, I think, is the name of it. And naturally, when I think about that event, I think, well, what about writing a Sherlock Holmes story during that time? But that's ruled out too. Do I really, first of all, you have to ask, do you really feel like doing that? There's no question here of playing the market or of a sense of duty or obligation. It has to be what you feel like writing. If it's a totally informal writing event, where the product of which is not necessarily ever going to see the light of day, so in other words, not the strictures of NaNoWriMo, then it can be anything, which means that it should be something you want to do, personally want to do. And also there's the fact that Sherlock Holmes pastiche at 60,000 words would be a Sherlock Holmes pastiche novel, and I'm not sure that I want to commit to the Holmes world for that length of time. Not at all. In fact, I'm sure that I'm not. So for me, that's ruled out. Maybe that'll be different for you. Maybe you have a longer Sherlock Holmes story that you want to do. If we set our goal as 1,000 words a day, if we were to do that, then that's what we're talking about. If we do 1,000 words a day and we don't take any days off, that's a big manuscript when you're done. I like that idea. The more I've thought about it, the more I've liked that idea. The question for me is not the length or the time commitment or the word commitment. It's, what am I going to do? What am I going to write? I have a short story set in ancient Rome that I have wanted to revisit. I wrote it probably 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and I liked it. And I don't know if maybe I think I have a very old word processor printed out version of it, and I wonder what I could do with it. Could I make it bigger? But I don't think I can make it that big. So what would fit in that space? What is a project that is big enough that will still sustain my interest for that whole time? Contemporary fiction, I think, is ruled out. Most printed contemporary fiction doesn't sustain my interest for that long, even though I have to read it. I'm still not interested. I don't see how I don't know that I have the faith to do that myself. And I just wrote a fantasy story. I just wrote V.O. Fala. So I'm not sure that I want to go back to fantasy. There's still science fiction. There's even mystery. What if I were to try my hand at a historical murder mystery? Those often fascinate me. They are some of my favorite mysteries to read. What if I did that? And what about you? What are you going to do? What projects are on your mind if we were to do a mutual accountability writing group in February? And what do you think about that idea? Not the writing group. I definitely want to do that. I'm going to go back to writing no matter what. I don't care if I get a single bite on the line on YouTube. I'm still going to do it. I miss writing fiction way too much when I don't do it. So I want to do that starting in February. I just have to pick a project. But if we were to do it together, what would that look like? I'm a big fan of requirements. I'm a big fan of that. Naturally, I would be, since I've been writing deadline prose since your parents were children, or your grandparents were children. I've been writing deadline prose a long time. To me, writing is almost completely synonymous with deadlines and restrictions, requirements. Almost. I try not to make it that way because that will ultimately hamper it. But I can't help it. If I have a writing thing to do and I don't have a date when it's due, I just don't do it. Or I'm really bad at it. I'm really, really bad at it. And setting my own deadlines doesn't help. Usually, but I'll do it in this case. I want to get better at that sort of thing. And likewise with the requirements. So what if we were to say that we're doing a 2-month writing event with 1,000 words a day? 1,000 words is not hard. It's almost half. It's a little more than half of what you would need to do for NaNoWriMo proper. But 1,000 words a day for 2 months will leave you with a large manuscript. What if we did that and then worked out the mutual accountability stuff as we go along? What would that be? I don't even know what that would be. Videos that are specifically tailored to the writing group. A private Voxer group that's specifically tailored to the writing group so that we can stay in touch with each other, egg each other on, that sort of thing. I don't know what that would be. But I still have days to think about it and also to get your input. The mutual accountability thing, the parameters of it, how we will actually do it communally in lieu of NaNoWriMo, is a little bit vague in my mind. That's not so troubling because we can work on that as we go along. The thing that troubles me is that what I'm going to write is vague in my mind as well, and that can't stay true. You and I must decide on that more or less tonight so that we have time to prepare. Almost certainly, anything that you pick is going to require some prep. You don't want to be doing that on the fly when you're writing in February. So, what's your project? Tell Steve all about it. What's your project? What are the potentials? What would you write in February if we did this together? That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering it for me, and I'm wondering it for you. All the ideas that come to my mind are wrong in one way or another. They're all... I, for instance, am in love with the idea of NaNoWriMo, of generating new material. There are a whole bunch of things that I have in notebooks and files of various kinds out here that I could haul out and continue, finish, elaborate on. I feel like doing whole cloth. I feel like writing something new, making something new, partly encouraged by how wonderful the experience of writing VO Follow was. That was brand new. I myself am leaning towards doing something new, but what should it be? If I'm thinking about writing something all the way until Camp NaNoWriMo, that's a long time. What's going to hold my interest that long? For me, probably it would be historical, but maybe not. Maybe the fact that I automatically repulse against contemporary fiction means that's what I should do. And just to give it a try. Like I've tried that a number of times in recent writing projects in the last few years, where I notice a reluctance or a shortcoming on my own part and just attack it directly. It's felt really good. Maybe not in the moment, but it's felt really good. So what about the rest of you? I'm all at 6s and 7s. Are you? What are you going to write? What are we going to write in February? Tell me all about it and tell me what ideas you have for what we should do to make this a more firmed up official thing. So anyway, that's your writing video for today, and mine as well. I need to put in some time on this. I have one deadline thing that I have to do tonight. All the rest of the time, I'm going to either play with the new releases to get them in some sort of order, or cudgel my brains about writing. So anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.